When we speak about patience, we are not talking about a simple act of sitting and waiting for life to improve on its own. True patience, the kind that is beloved to Allah, is much deeper. It is a state of the heart, a commitment of the soul, a conscious effort to remain steadfast while trusting in Allah's wisdom and timing. Patience is not just tolerating suffering. It is understanding that suffering has a purpose, that every difficulty carries a lesson, and that every hardship is an opportunity for the soul to grow. Life is not a straight path, and no one walks it without encountering trials. Some of us may face financial difficulties that feel overwhelming, the kind of stress that keeps us awake at night, making every day seem heavier than the last. Others might deal with emotional pain, the betrayal of a friend, the loss of someone we love, the heartache of seeing our dreams crumble. Then there are physical hardships, illnesses that test our resilience, pain that challenges our faith. Each one of these moments is designed in a way to measure our reliance on Allah, to see whether we will turn to Him or whether we will become lost in despair and frustration. Many people make the mistake of thinking patience is passive. They believe that being patient means sitting idly, doing nothing, and merely accepting whatever comes. But patience is not passive. Patience is active. It is a conscious decision to continue striving, to continue praying, to continue trusting Allah, even when the heart is heavy, even when the mind questions, and even when the world seems unfair. Patience is a bridge that connects despair to hope. It is the rope that holds the heart above the waves of anxiety and fear, reminding the believer that Allah's knowledge is perfect and His wisdom is beyond our understanding. Consider the times in your life when you felt helpless, when the challenges seemed impossible, and when every solution appeared out of reach. In those moments, patience is the companion that keeps the heart anchored. It is the silent acknowledgement that Allah knows what we cannot see, that He understands what we cannot comprehend, and that He is aware of every tear, every sigh, and every silent plea. Our struggles do not go unnoticed, and our pain is not meaningless. The act of being patient is itself an expression of faith, a declaration that we trust the One who created us and knows what is best for us. Patience also requires discipline. It requires training the heart not to rebel against difficulty, not to complain incessantly, and not to despair when circumstances are harsh. It requires us to rise every morning with the determination to face life with hope and resilience, even when everything inside urges us to give up. In fact, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, described patience as a source of light in the darkness. It is what transforms ordinary endurance into an act of worship, where the believer's suffering becomes a means of drawing closer to Allah. Another important aspect of patience is understanding that everything in this world is temporary. The pain we feel today will not last forever. And the trials we face, no matter how severe, are fleeting in comparison to the eternal mercy and reward of Allah. The believer recognizes that life is a test, that every difficulty is a temporary measure, and that patience is the key to unlocking the blessings that lie ahead. This perspective allows the heart to remain calm and steadfast, knowing that while we may not understand the reasons behind our struggles, Allah does, and His plan is always perfect. Patience also has a practical effect on our daily lives. It teaches us to respond to adversity with wisdom rather than anger. It enables us to make thoughtful decisions instead of impulsive ones driven by frustration. When a person is patient, they navigate challenges with clarity and composure. They do not allow setbacks to dictate their emotions or actions. Instead, they turn to Allah, seek guidance through prayer, and rely on their faith as a source of strength. This inner fortitude transforms suffering into an opportunity for growth, resilience, and spiritual elevation. Moreover, patience is closely linked to gratitude. A patient heart recognizes the blessings that remain. Even amidst trials, while the believer experiences hardship, they also remain mindful of the good that surrounds them. The love of family, the kindness of friends, the simple joys of life. Gratitude does not erase pain, but it provides balance, reminding us that even in difficulty, Allah's mercy is present. The combination of patience and gratitude allows the heart to endure suffering without losing hope or perspective. It is also crucial to understand that patience is not only about tolerating what happens externally, but also about controlling the internal struggles, the anger, the bitterness, the sadness that naturally arise when life becomes difficult. True patience involves an internal struggle where the believer disciplines the heart to trust Allah's plan, to remain humble, and to seek His help continuously. Every tear that falls in patience is a testimony of faith. Every sigh carried with patience is a step towards spiritual growth, and every moment of endurance strengthens the believer's relationship with Allah.
In essence, patience is a gift.
It is a tool given to the believer to navigate life's inevitable hardships. It is a shield against despair and a means of attaining inner peace. It allows the heart to remain connected to Allah, to maintain hope, and to face trials with dignity and strength. The person who masters patience understands that pain is not permanent, that suffering has purpose, and that Allah's mercy and wisdom are infinite. They learn that while they may not control the circumstances of life, they can control their response, their trust, and their reliance on the Creator. One of the most comforting realities of our faith is the understanding that Allah is fully aware of everything we experience, every hidden sorrow, every silent prayer, and every tear that falls from our eyes. Often, in moments of difficulty, we may feel isolated, as if no one understands the pain we carry or the burdens we bear. We might feel as though the world has turned its back, leaving us alone with our struggles. Yet, the most profound truth is that Allah is never distant. He sees every tear, knows every pang of sorrow, and comprehends the depth of every wound, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual. Tears are not merely water that falls from the eyes, they are expressions of the heart, signs of vulnerability, and proof of sincerity. When we cry in anguish, frustration, or despair, these tears are a form of communication with Allah, a silent dialogue that often goes unnoticed by the world, but is profoundly recognized in the heavens. Each tear carries a weight of emotion, a reflection of our internal state, and Allah in His infinite wisdom witnesses every drop. He does not need a declaration, an explanation, or a justification. He sees the pain that words cannot express and knows the silent cries of the heart that no one else can perceive. It is also important to recognize that Allah values these tears. They are not meaningless or wasted. They hold significance in the sight of the Almighty. Tears shed out of genuine sadness, humility, or grief are acts that carry reward, for they reflect the vulnerability and sincerity of the believer. They demonstrate a heart that acknowledges its own limitations, a soul that turns to Allah in moments of helplessness, and a person who is aware of the need for divine support. The very act of shedding a tear in patience and trust is a form of worship, a testament to the believer's reliance on the one who created them and knows their deepest needs. Many times when a person faces trials, they feel overwhelmed by the weight of their burdens. They may cry silently in the darkness, praying for relief, asking for guidance, or simply expressing the pain that they cannot voice to anyone else. In these moments, the heart can feel heavy, the mind restless, and the soul weary. But even when tears fall in solitude, without an audience or a comforting friend, Allah is aware. He sees what no one else sees and knows what no one else knows. This knowledge should provide immense solace because it reminds the believer that they are never truly alone. The Creator is intimately aware of every heartache, and His attention is more profound than any human gaze. Furthermore, the act of crying itself is a form of cleansing. Tears release the tension of grief, the weight of sorrow, and the pressure of anxiety. Spiritually, they allow the heart to unburden itself, to surrender to the recognition of human limitations, and to open up to divine mercy. Allah's awareness of our tears reinforces the idea that no suffering is insignificant in His sight. Even the smallest tear that falls out of heartfelt emotion is observed, valued, and acknowledged by the one who knows all things. It is also significant to understand the spiritual dimension of tears. In many instances, tears are a sign of humility, a demonstration of awareness that the believer is in need of Allah's guidance and mercy. When the heart cries, it is an acknowledgement of human frailty, a recognition that we cannot control everything, and an expression of trust in Allah's plan. These tears often accompany sincere dua, heartfelt repentance, or quiet longing for relief. The combination of a tearful heart and a turning toward Allah creates a powerful spiritual connection that brings comfort even in the midst of pain. Another profound aspect is that Allah's attention to our tears extends to moments of unseen suffering. Often people hide their pain behind smiles, laughter, or stoicism. They may feel pressure to appear strong, to avoid burdening others, or to conform to societal expectations. Yet even when sorrow is concealed, Allah sees. He observes what the eyes try to hide and knows the truth behind the mask. This awareness is not only comforting but also empowering, for it assures the believer that their struggles are not ignored and their pain is not overlooked. Every moment of suffering, every tear that falls in silence is recognized by Allah in ways that may bring reward, healing, and elevation of status in the sight of the Almighty. It is also worth reflecting that Allah's knowledge of our tears carries a message of hope and encouragement. When a person understands that Allah sees and values their suffering, they gain strength to endure further trials. They realize that patience, perseverance, and reliance on Allah are never in vain. The tears we shed, the nights we spend awake in distress, and the moments we feel broken are all witnessed by the one who is most merciful, most compassionate, and most wise. This awareness transforms our suffering into an opportunity for spiritual growth, an avenue for mercy, and a reminder of the divine presence that surrounds us even in solitude. Additionally, the recognition that Allah sees our tears reminds us of His ultimate justice. Life may sometimes seem unfair, and the world may appear indifferent to our pain. But Allah's attention to every tear assures us that no act of suffering goes unnoticed. Every hardship endured, every moment of distress, and every tear shed in sincerity is recorded, valued, and taken into account in ways that transcend human understanding. This divine awareness ensures that the believer is never forgotten, and every sorrow carries the potential for relief, reward, and elevation in the sight of Allah. Life is a journey filled with trials, tests, and challenges, and every believer, without exception, will face moments of hardship. These difficulties are not meaningless, nor are they punishments intended to harm. Rather, they are opportunities carefully designed by Allah to refine the soul, strengthen faith, and cultivate a deeper connection with the Creator. Trials in life, whether they are emotional, physical, or financial, serve as catalysts for spiritual growth, shaping the character of the believer and teaching lessons that comfort, success, or ease alone could never impart. The believer who encounters hardship and remains steadfast learns the value of reliance on Allah. When things are easy, when life is smooth, it is natural for the heart to feel self-sufficient, to forget the one who provides sustenance, guidance, and protection. But trials reveal our true dependence. When faced with a difficulty, the heart turns naturally toward Allah, seeking comfort, guidance, and relief. It is in these moments of struggle that the believer develops humility, recognizing that despite our efforts, ultimate control belongs to Allah alone. Spiritual growth occurs when we shift from reliance on ourselves or others to reliance on the one who sees all, knows all, and has absolute wisdom. Trials also serve to purify the soul. Life is filled with desires, attachments, and distractions, and sometimes the heart becomes heavy with arrogance, pride, or negligence in worship. Challenges strip away these layers, revealing the state of the heart and teaching the believer to redirect focus to what truly matters. When a person faces adversity, they are reminded of their mortality, of their limitations, and of the need for spiritual resilience. Pain, loss, and difficulty become tools of purification, shaping a heart that is more attuned to Allah, more sincere in worship, and more conscious of the transient nature of worldly life. Consider the example of personal loss, losing a loved one, a job, or even a cherished dream. The immediate response is often sorrow, frustration, or confusion. But if one reflects deeply, these moments provide valuable spiritual lessons. They teach patience, endurance, and reliance on Allah. They remind the believer that all creation is temporary and that ultimate comfort, peace, and satisfaction are found only in the remembrance of Allah and in the pursuit of righteousness. Through trials, the believer learns to accept divine decree with grace, to seek solace in prayer and supplication, and to trust that Allah's wisdom encompasses what the human mind cannot fully comprehend. Moreover, trials teach empathy, compassion, and kindness. A person who has faced suffering is more likely to understand the pain of others, to extend help, and to show patience when others stumble. Spiritual growth is not only personal but relational. The experiences of hardship cultivate a heart that is gentle, considerate, and aware of the struggles faced by fellow human beings. The believer who has known sorrow can respond with wisdom and kindness, offering comfort and encouragement, and turning their experiences into lessons that benefit not just themselves but others as well. Trials also highlight the temporary nature of worldly life. The pleasures, comforts, and achievements we often chase are fleeting, and true fulfillment cannot be found in material gain alone. Adversity reminds the believer of the eternal nature of the soul and the lasting significance of actions performed for the sake of Allah. Every difficulty endured in patience, every hardship faced with faith, and every struggle met with reliance on Allah has spiritual significance. These experiences elevate the believer's rank in the sight of Allah, refine the heart, and prepare the soul for the ultimate journey of the hereafter. It is essential to recognize that spiritual growth through trials is a gradual process. It is not instantaneous, nor is it always comfortable. Just as a tree grows stronger through winds and storms, the believer's heart is fortified by challenges and difficulties. Each trial strengthens patience, deepens faith, and increases awareness of Allah's presence. The believer learns to see obstacles not as barriers but as stepping stones towards spiritual maturity. Every hardship carries with it an opportunity to develop qualities such as resilience, humility, gratitude, and unwavering trust in Allah. Another aspect of trials as a means of spiritual growth is the cultivation of hope. Even in the midst of suffering, the believer is reminded that no pain is permanent, and every trial has the potential for reward and relief. The understanding that Allah is merciful, aware, and just provides the strength to endure difficulties with a heart that remains connected to the Creator. The believer begins to recognize that trials, while challenging, are part of a larger divine plan that ultimately benefits the soul, and that patience and perseverance are not only acts of endurance but also acts of worship that bring one closer to Allah. Trials also provide the opportunity for self-reflection and introspection. When difficulties arise, the believer is prompted to examine their actions, intentions, and relationship with Allah. Challenges encourage self-assessment, helping the believer identify areas of weakness, address shortcomings, and improve character. Spiritual growth is often a result of this conscious reflection, where the believer seeks forgiveness, strengthens their commitment to prayer, and aligns their actions with faith. Hardship, therefore, is not just a test of endurance, but a mirror for the soul, revealing both areas of growth and opportunities for improvement. Furthermore, adversity teaches gratitude in ways that ease alone cannot. When a person experiences difficulty, they come to appreciate the blessings they may have previously overlooked. Health, safety, family, and provision. These become more cherished when contrasted with the reality of hardship. Gratitude nurtured through trials strengthens the heart, deepens spiritual awareness, and encourages continuous remembrance of Allah. This perspective transforms the believer's approach to life, fostering a heart that remains content, patient, and focused on what is eternal rather than fleeting. In essence, trials are not punishments or signs of divine anger, but rather they are opportunities given by Allah for the believer to grow, refine their character and strengthen their faith. Each difficulty is a means of spiritual elevation, a chance to draw closer to Allah, and a reminder of human dependence on divine guidance and mercy. The believer learns to see challenges not as obstacles but as blessings in disguise, tools for refinement and reminders of Allah's infinite wisdom and compassion. When life becomes challenging, when trials weigh heavily upon the heart, and when sorrow and anxiety fill the mind, one of the most powerful tools a believer possesses is supplication. Turning to Allah in humble prayer and heartfelt conversation. Supplication or dua is not just a ritual or formality. It is a profound act of reliance, a direct link between the soul and its creator, and a means of finding comfort and clarity in moments of difficulty. Through sincere supplication, the believer acknowledges their own limitations, expresses their deepest needs, and seeks the guidance and mercy of the one who is all-knowing, all-powerful, and infinitely compassionate. Life's hardships can take many forms. There are times when the trials are external, financial struggles that seem insurmountable, family conflicts that leave the heart heavy, health issues that drain both body and spirit, or situations that appear unfair and beyond one's control. Then there are the internal struggles, anxiety, fear, doubt, and sadness that quietly erode the strength of the believer's heart. In both cases, turning to Allah in dua is a source of immense relief. The act of raising one's hands, speaking from the heart, and pouring out one's worries reminds the believer that they are not alone and that ultimate control and wisdom belong to Allah. Supplication is more than a plea for immediate relief. It is an expression of trust and dependence on Allah. When a believer makes dua, they are admitting that they do not have the power to change everything on their own, and that they need guidance, protection, and support from the one who is capable of all things. This recognition strengthens faith because it encourages the heart to surrender, to release worry, and to place hope firmly in divine wisdom. In doing so, the believer finds solace knowing that even if the outcome is not what they expect, Allah's plan is always perfect, and His knowledge surpasses what human understanding can grasp. One of the beautiful aspects of supplication is its accessibility. A believer does not need wealth, influence, or status to be heard. Every sincere dua, whether whispered in the silence of the night or spoken aloud during the day, reaches Allah's awareness. This is a source of immense comfort because it reminds the believer that their struggles are significant in the sight of Allah and that He is attentive to every word, every sigh, and every tear. The act of supplication is, in essence, a dialogue with the Creator. A moment where the heart unburdens itself, where hope is renewed, and where the believer draws strength and reassurance that they are seen, understood, and loved by Allah. Reliance on Allah, often referred to as tawakkul, is inseparable from supplication. It is not enough to simply ask, one must also trust in Allah's wisdom and timing. True reliance means seeking help through dua, while simultaneously putting in effort to overcome the difficulty, knowing that the outcome is ultimately in Allah's hands. It is an active form of trust, a combination of seeking divine assistance and taking practical steps toward resolution. This balance between action and reliance ensures that the believer does not despair, becomes proactive in addressing challenges, and remains spiritually connected while navigating life's complexities. Supplication during hardship also cultivates patience. The believer learns that answers may not come immediately, that relief may be delayed, and that the journey through difficulty is often gradual. Yet through consistent dua and trust in Allah, the heart develops endurance, resilience, and a sense of calm that transcends immediate circumstances. The process itself, turning repeatedly to Allah in prayer, acknowledging dependence and maintaining hope, strengthens the soul and reinforces the understanding that every trial has a purpose and every hardship carries lessons that may not be immediately apparent. Moreover, sincere dua transforms the believer's relationship with Allah. It deepens intimacy, fosters awareness of His mercy, and nurtures a sense of gratitude even in adversity. When a person experiences hardship and responds by seeking Allah's guidance rather than succumbing to despair, the heart becomes more conscious of divine support. Supplication reminds the believer that their value is not measured by worldly success or ease, but by their faith, persistence, and devotion. Each dua strengthens this bond, reminding the heart that Allah is always near, always attentive, and always responsive to those who call upon Him with sincerity. It is also important to recognize that reliance on Allah does not absolve one of responsibility. The believer is encouraged to take practical steps, seek solutions, and act wisely in the face of challenges. However, the ultimate outcome is placed in Allah's hands, and this balance between effort and reliance is a hallmark of true faith. By coupling action with dua, the believer demonstrates both initiative and humility, recognizing their limitations while trusting in divine wisdom. This harmony between personal effort and spiritual dependence is what strengthens the heart, builds resilience, and provides peace during even the most difficult trials. Supplication can also be a source of hope and optimism. The very act of reaching out to Allah in moments of despair reinforces the belief that relief is possible, that mercy is near, and that guidance is attainable. Even when circumstances seem bleak, the believer who continues to pray experiences a renewed sense of purpose, clarity, and reassurance. This hope is not naive or passive. It is grounded in faith, strengthened by reliance on Allah, and sustained through the understanding that divine wisdom surpasses human comprehension. Additionally, turning to Allah in hardship nurtures gratitude and awareness. In recognizing one's dependence on Allah and seeking His guidance, the believer becomes more mindful of His blessings, protection, and mercy in all aspects of life. Every answered prayer, every moment of relief, and even the endurance of hardship itself becomes a reminder of Allah's care. This awareness strengthens the soul, promotes patience, and cultivates a deep sense of contentment and trust, even amidst ongoing challenges. Supplication and reliance together transform hardship into a spiritual journey. The believer learns that difficulties are not obstacles to faith, but opportunities to grow closer to Allah, to strengthen trust, and to cultivate inner peace. Every dua offered, every moment of reliance, and every act of surrender contributes to the refinement of the heart, the deepening of faith, and the realization that ultimate support and guidance come only from Allah. One of the most powerful sources of comfort and encouragement for a believer in times of hardship is the promise of reward for patience. Allah, in His infinite wisdom and mercy, has assured those who endure trials with steadfastness and faith that their patience will not go unnoticed and their struggles will not be wasted. Patience is not merely an act of endurance, it is a form of worship, a demonstration of trust in Allah, and a reflection of sincere faith. The believer who faces difficulties and responds with patience is promised immense spiritual reward, both in this life and the hereafter. And this assurance becomes a guiding light during moments of despair. The Quran frequently reminds us of the virtues of patience and the magnitude of its reward. Allah tells us that those who are patient will receive blessings beyond human comprehension, and that patience is a means of attaining nearness to Him. These verses emphasize that patience is not a passive state of resignation, but an active and conscious choice to maintain faith, trust, and dignity even in the face of trials. The believer who practices patience demonstrates reliance on Allah, recognizes the temporary nature of worldly challenges, and cultivates a heart that remains connected to the Creator despite external adversity. Reward for patience is multifaceted. Firstly, it provides spiritual elevation. Every trial faced with endurance and every hardship met with trust strengthens the soul and draws the believer closer to Allah. Patience refines character, teaches humility, and nurtures gratitude. Through patience, the believer develops qualities that are highly valued in the sight of Allah, such as resilience, perseverance, and a calm heart that does not succumb to despair or anger. The spiritual growth achieved through patience is itself a reward, for it cultivates a heart that is prepared to face future challenges with wisdom and faith. Secondly, the reward of patience is linked to divine protection and relief. While the believer may experience temporary hardship, Allah shows that every moment of suffering carries the potential for ease, comfort, and resolution. The trials that seem unbearable at the moment are, in reality, opportunities for spiritual cleansing, mercy, and elevation in rank. The promise of reward assures the believer that suffering is never wasted, that every tear, every sigh, and every effort to remain steadfast is acknowledged and valued in the eyes of Allah. This understanding encourages the heart to endure with faith, hope, and unwavering trust in divine wisdom. Patience also brings about inner peace and contentment, which are profound forms of reward. In a world filled with uncertainty, stress, and fleeting pleasures, a patient heart experiences a sense of stability and calm that transcends circumstance. The believer who remains patient does not allow trials to dominate their emotions or cloud their judgment. Instead, they navigate challenges with clarity, wisdom, and a sense of divine support. This tranquility of the heart is itself a significant reward, for it allows the believer to maintain faith, make thoughtful decisions, and approach life with optimism despite difficulties. Moreover, patience has the power to transform suffering into a source of blessings. Every hardship endured with faith and perseverance becomes a means of purification, an opportunity to shed sins, and a pathway to spiritual elevation. The believer who faces trials patiently experiences a refining of character, a strengthening of faith, and an enhancement of spiritual awareness. Through patience, suffering is no longer merely a source of pain. It becomes a tool for spiritual growth, a reminder of human dependence on Allah, and a means of attaining divine pleasure and reward. Another aspect of reward for patience is the promise of divine assistance. Allah assures that those who are patient will be supported, guided, and aided in ways that may not be immediately visible. This support can manifest in many forms: the easing of hardship, the provision of solutions, the strengthening of faith, or the bestowal of inner resilience. The believer who maintains patience trusts that Allah's assistance is always near, that relief will come at the perfect time, and that every trial carries the potential for a greater outcome than one can perceive. This assurance strengthens the believer's heart, encourages perseverance, and fosters a deep sense of hope, even in the darkest moments. Patience is also intimately connected with gratitude and contentment. The believer who endures trials patiently develops a heightened awareness of Allah's blessings and mercy. Even amidst difficulties, they recognize the positives in their life, cherish the small comforts, and remain mindful of divine protection. This perspective transforms challenges into opportunities for reflection, appreciation, and spiritual growth. The ability to remain grateful and content despite adversity is itself a form of reward, for it nurtures a heart that is resilient, humble, and deeply connected to Allah. It is also important to remember that patience is not only rewarded in this life, but carries immense significance in the hereafter. Allah promises that those who endure trials with steadfastness, faith, and reliance on Him will be elevated in rank, forgiven for shortcomings, and granted eternal reward. The believer's patience in the face of suffering becomes a source of light in the hereafter, a testimony of their devotion and a reflection of their unwavering faith. This eternal reward provides profound motivation, reminding the believer that worldly trials are temporary and that enduring them with patience leads to everlasting blessings beyond imagination. Furthermore, the promise of reward encourages the believer to view hardship through a lens of hope rather than despair. When faced with trials, the heart can easily succumb to frustration, anxiety, or hopelessness. Yet knowing that Allah values patience and promises reward allows the believer to endure suffering with dignity, courage, and trust. Every act of patience, whether large or small, contributes to spiritual elevation and brings the heart closer to divine pleasure. This perspective transforms the experience of hardship, instilling resilience, optimism, and unwavering faith in Allah's wisdom. Patience, therefore, is not merely a passive endurance of life's difficulties. It is an active and conscious effort to maintain faith, trust, and reliance on Allah. It encompasses perseverance, humility, gratitude, and hope, and it transforms suffering into a means of spiritual growth and divine reward. Every trial faced with patience becomes a testimony of faith, a step towards spiritual elevation, and a reflection of the believer's reliance on Allah's perfect wisdom, mercy, and justice.